Hi guys, this is Berserk Miner, and this is going to be a new series called the Industrial Craft Tutorial. There are going to be, see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 videos in this series, and it's all about teaching how to use Industrial Craft, how everything works, to get you guys more familiar with it. I hope these episodes won't get too long, because otherwise they'll get really boring. So, let's get started. This is my intro section. So basically in Industrial Craft, you have power generation. Okay? Various levels of it. Probably the first thing you're going to start with is a generator, and then you're going to work your way up. Probably, I'd say once you get a generator, the second thing you're going to get is a solar panel, or 2, or 4, or 10. Lots of solar panels. Geothermal comes later. Nuclear reactor, as you can imagine, comes way late. But that's all the power gen. There's also windmill and water mill, but those are, I don't use them. Some people might. Then there's power storage. There are different levels of power storage, and I'm going to teach you how to use those. Also, depending on the amount of energy being transmitted in the wires, you'll need different grades of wires. It goes from the lowest grade of wire up to the highest, most insulated grade of cable. There are also specialty cables, which I will go into probably in the items. There's nothing yet. I haven't set up the chest for these other ones. I've only set up the chest for this one. But I will go into that later. And then there's these are the machines. Okay, so tier 1, the very first thing you're going to get is the iron furnace. This is like not even a tier. It's like an upgrade to the normal furnace. So this is, I call this tier 1 machines here. Electric furnace, macerator, extractor, compressor, and recycler. Electrolyzer, magnetizer, canning machine, miner, and pump. These are just miscellaneous things that are, I think they're more useful in multiplayer servers. This is tier 3. These things require this advanced machine block. There's the induction furnace and the mass fabricator, as well as the terraformer, teleporter, and Tesla coil. I will go into all this in tier 3 machines, and the other stuff in tier 2. So yeah. You'll also, these items are, I'll get into those later. Alright, and these are all the items. So as you can see, Industrial Craft adds a variety of armors. Probably the lowest armor is the scuba helmet, but I'd say the most common armor is the bronze armor, simply because it's a cheap and durable armor that is very useful. You can also build an array of bronze tools. The scuba helmet with this hazmat suit is basically a diving suit. It'll also protect you from radiation when you're working with nuclear power and stuff. The scuba helmet will only work if you use a compressed air cell, but I'll get into that in the items section of this tutorial. Next, there's the nano suit that takes power. It's basically the tier 1 version of the quantum suit. The quantum suit is very powerful, and it's like the highest tier suit in the game. And then there's a bunch of miscellaneous things here, as well as jetpacks and paint, and there's stuff you can do with crops, and various building materials that the mod adds, as well as a bunch of cool mining tools and stuff like that. Alright, so let's get started with this episode. That was the intro. Okay, so this episode is power gen. So in here, I have the basic power gen. So typically you start with the generator, and then the second tier of the generator is the geothermal generator. I put these in the same category because you input stuff and it burns it up and puts it into and outputs energy. This is another variety. Basically, these passively collect energy. This one can be force-fed, I guess you could call it, manually fed, like water cells and stuff like that to produce more power. That's what I'm going to do for the sake of demonstration, but the water mill can produce energy from just passively sitting there, as well as these other two, which I will get into over there in that section. Alright, then I will also get into the power storage, because that'll be helpful once you start generating a good amount of power, you're going to need this. Notice I did not include the nuclear reactor. That's because I am still debating whether or not I'm going to cover that in this series. If I do, it's going to have its own episode, because that thing is complicated. I'm also going to cover the different tiers of wire in this episode. And I'm also going to cover these basic tools here. The wrench, electric wrench, which is the upgraded version, and the EU reader. So let's come over to this place I set up. Alright. So it's not totally set up actually. Okay. So I'm going to need to grab this EU reader, and I'm going to need one more thing. An electric wrench. Basically the difference between an electric wrench and a wrench is that the electric wrench will never break and it runs on power. Alright, so basically what a bat box is a storage unit for power. Okay, it's that simple enough. So if we get ourselves some I think I put batteries in here. Oh, I didn't. Alright, so if we get ourselves some batteries like this, you can see that we can stick them in here and it'll charge up the bat box. It'll take the charge out of the battery and store it in this bat box. This bat box, you can see over here, can store up to 40,000 EU, which is the industrial craft version of power. Okay, one battery stores, as you can see, 10,000 EU, and I can input these batteries, but I can also output into the batteries from up here. Okay, so if I use this wrench, I can stick it up in this top slot and it'll charge in that top slot. So that's pretty cool. See, it'll charge, but I didn't use any of the charge yet. Okay, so that's the first tier of bat box. It can only store this much, and it can only output packets of EU that are 32 EU per tick. I'll get into that later. The MFE is the second tier of storage, and it can hold 600,000 EU. So that is a lot more than that. See, mental math is not working right now. So it can store a lot of energy. Okay, let's just say that. So these batteries can store a lot more energy in this, and it outputs more EU per tick. So that's like 4 times more EU per tick, which is pretty good. And I'll show you the recipes for these later. Last is the MFSU. This is 10 million. Yeah, this is 10 million EU. So that is a ton of EU. You're probably not gonna need that much until you get working with the higher tier machines. But this will also emit 512 EU per tick. So you get pretty up there with this stuff. So that's basically the short version on these power storage. Now I'm going to get into this section over here. So this is what the episode is pretty much all about, is the generators and ways to generate power. So when you have a generator, oops. See, oh, I'm in creative mode. Didn't need to do that. So let me grab my stuff back. With a generator. Alright. And I'm going to break this just so I can show you guys it charging. So the bat box can store 40,000 EU, I meant, sorry. So if I stick in some coal, this generator is going to generate energy from that coal, and it's going to send it along this cable, which I've hooked up into this bat box. Okay, there's one catch with this bat box that you have to be aware of. You can only take energy out of the bat box through the side with this dot. Okay, no other side has this dot, and the way you change the way that dot is facing is by right-clicking on the side you want it to be, or by shifting and right-clicking on the side that you want it to be opposite from, and it'll go there. So if I put it on this side, the energy is trying to flow in through the input, and it cannot. Okay, so if I burn up another piece of coal, it can't go in here because the dot is right here. I'll show you. See, dot's right there. It can't go in there because that is the input slot. But now that I have it like that, it can go in. Alright. So here's the deal. This generator can produce 10 EU per tick. Okay, so what that means is for every tick, and a tick is 1/10 of a Minecraft second, or it's 1/10 of a second in Minecraft. Okay, so every tick is putting out 10 EU, and we can check that using this EU reader. Okay, so it's telling us that it is sending out 10 EU per tick very steadily. That is all it's doing. 10 EU per tick. It's a very steady way of getting EU. So the way to use this is you right click once and it says starting new measurement, and you right click again and it tells you how much EU was output on an average per tick between the times that you clicked it. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to show you is, oops, wrong one, this. Alright, is the geothermal generator. Now I'm going to break it and I'm going to replace it so that I can show you guys the way it works. Okay. By the way, I should mention that when you right click on the dotted side of this, it'll pick it up, but if you right click on this side, it just rotates it. So right click on the dot side to pick it up, right click on any other face to rotate it, and shift right click on a face to put it on the opposite side. So yeah, okay. So based on the sign, obviously this geothermal generator is going to, this is a oh, I know what happened. Oops. Alright, the geothermal generator will generate EU from, you guessed it, lava. So stick in the lava and it consumes the lava, and you can see it's on, and it outputs it into this machine, the BET box. Alright, so we've got that covered. Very cool. And we can test that by right clicking and then right clicking again, and it says 20 EU per tick was outputted on an average over 15 ticks. So that's exactly what we expected, because that's what this sign says, right? Alright, so this is a little more complicated. The water mill is a little more complicated. It'll emit 2 EU per tick when it's manned. So when you're placing like water cells in here, it's gonna put it out 2 EU per tick. But if you have like water source blocks around it, like it's gonna output 0.1 EU per tick per block, per water block, in a, I think it's a 3x3 around it. So it's really not a very high-powered machine. I don't use it because it's not the most efficient item I've ever used. But I don't know, some other people might like it. So, yes. I'm not going to demonstrate that because it works the same way as this. Just put in the water and it generates power. Now you'll notice this is a different cable. Okay? That's because of the low packet size. 2 EU is ultra low voltage, okay? I think anything higher than like 5 EU per tick is this low voltage, which you can use this you can use copper cable for. But ultra low voltage is less than 5, I think. I think it's 5. But less than 5 you can use this ultra low voltage cable on, and it'll work just fine. Alright, so next is the windmill. So I've got one up there and one here. So we can see this windmill. It says up to 11 EU per tick depending on conditions. So by that it means like if it is thunderstorming out, it is going to generate more EU. But there is also another condition. The higher it is, and the fewer blocks that are around it, the more EU it's going to generate. So if we take a look at this, we can see that this one up there, in perfect sunshiny day, is generating half an EU per tick, which is pretty pathetic. Okay, I'm gonna just say that right now. It's really pathetic. Okay, so on average about 0.5 EU. So that's not the greatest, but if you want some extra passive energy, go ahead, be my guest. You can use it. This is probably my favorite. Like once you get like 10 of these, you're pretty much set. So this emits 1 EU per tick, and all it requires is direct sun. So we can test that by checking this, saying 1 EU per tick. It's going to be constant and forever, only 1. And 1 second. Okay. And you can see that it's powering up this bat box. All of these, because they are only emitting like 1 or 2 EU per tick, and in this one's case like half, they can use ultra low. But watch what happens if I take this ultra low and try to power this, and try to use it with this geothermal generator. So it's powered. Is this full? Oh, it's full, that's why. So if I plop this down again, yeah, it blew up. So if you try to put too much EU, or too much voltage through a low tier cable at once, it'll explode. So that being said, you have to be careful with your different generator styles. These ones can take ultra low, like I just showed you, these white cables. These ones do require a minimum of copper. Alright, so that is the general basics of generating power, and all of these other two storage systems work exactly the same as the bat box, except they store more. Same thing, the dot side right there and there is the output. Okay, it is the only side that outputs. There's no way to get more output. That is it. Okay, I think that's basically everything I wanted to show you guys. So this has been episode 1 of the Industrial Craft tutorial series. I hope you guys enjoyed it. See you guys next time.